Right now, we're taking a look at two snowstorms moving through the northern United States. At this time, we have this first storm system that's located right in between Pennsylvania and upstate New York. At this time, bringing moderate to light snowfall for the most part throughout upstate New York. And this is expected to bring a large area of 1 to 3 to potentially over 3 inches of snow in certain areas of the Northeast. And then we have, of course, the second storm system, which is expected to become more significant for the northern Midwest as well as the Northeast in the very near future. And we do see that right now for the second storm system, the snowfall is rather light. We do see some moderate snowfall associated in some of these bands, but not really anything major at this point. But this storm is expected to encounter more instability, and we should see the snowfall become heavier at times as the storm continues to head further eastward. And so areas in the northern Midwest could experience over 6 inches of snow from this storm system. Taking a look at the latest depiction of the European model at this time, we do see that this first storm system should move close, bring the snow a little bit closer to the coast, where northern New Jersey will get involved a little bit. A winter weather advisory is issued throughout a large portion of Northeast, so you want to pay close attention for your Saturday morning to Saturday afternoon commute of that possibility of moderate snow showers moving through the area. But of course, the big focus in this video will be the storm system located in the northern Midwest, which is expected to become quite a powerful nor'easter, where we could potentially see gusty winds, coastal flooding, and of course heavy snowfall. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see blizzard conditions in certain areas as the storm continues to head further eastward, as we do see that there's plenty of cold air for the precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall in the northern Midwest. And we're going to see a ridge that's going to weaken just to the south of this storm system, which will allow this storm to move a little bit further southward. And we're going to see a stronger amount of ridging just to the west of this storm, which will bring a stronger northerly flow to push this low pressure system further southeastward, to the point where a lot of the Northeast and a lot of the areas further southward in the Midwest should also get involved with some snow showers. So like I said in my previous video, it is expected that temporarily this storm system will weaken as it heads towards the Great Lakes, because the jet stream will sort of straighten out, but it's only a matter of time before it re-strengthens once it enters the Northeast, where we see the millibar pressure drop down quite a bit, down to around the 980s to the upper 970s, based on what the latest depiction of the European model is stating, as the European model has been the forecast model that's more confident in bringing a strong jet stream dip right behind this storm. So we see the storm rapidly intensify, and throughout the Midwest and northern Midwest, you should expect 6 to 10 inches of snow, and then we could see 1 to 3 inches in Chicago, Indianapolis, a large portion of Ohio, and Detroit as well. But the snow will again bring those very, very high snow totals once this storm really gets going in the Northeast and rapidly intensifies. And we do see that this snow moves further southward as well into New Jersey. There's still uncertainty with the forecast because the GFS model still wants to focus the snow further northward and focus it in more towards New England rather than the southern states like New Jersey and into New York City, where in the GFS model scenario they aren't experiencing much of any snowfall accumulation. But it's a different story taking a look, of course, at the European model, where New York City, northern New Jersey, and northern Pennsylvania, and a lot of upstate New York experiences very heavy snowfall. And with a pressure this low and with the isobars this tightly packed, you should of course expect gusty winds, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see coastal flooding with this storm system as well, because this storm will be a powerhouse. That this millibar pressure is equivalent to a millibar pressure you'd see in hurricanes. So you need to prepare for the possibility of gusty winds and potentially blizzard conditions in certain areas. And moving forward, another thing I pointed out in my previous video is that if the European model scenario is correct, then this storm would move extremely slowly, which would prolong the period of impacts and enhance the total snowfall accumulation you receive, because it's going to keep snowing over a very prolonged period if this storm ends up moving as slow as the European model is forecasting, thanks to a negative tilt, which not only creates a more unstable environment but lingers the storm around for a little bit longer. We're really going to need to wait and see how strong the ridging will be just to the east of this storm system, because I'll determine how significant the jet stream dip will be, which will determine how much convection there will be, how much convective available potential energy energy, as well as the exact track of this and how quickly this develops, because if it develops a little bit slowly as a result of a weaker jet stream dip, then we would see more of the impacts towards New England rather than the areas sort of southward closer to the mid-Atlantic states like in New Jersey and New York City. So we're going to pay close attention to the small details like that over the next several days, and the jet stream dip will also determine how fast the storm moves, because the bigger the jet stream dip, the more likely it is to linger around northeast, because the negative tilt with the jet stream would build, which would steer the warmer air north of the storm system and the cooler air south of the storm system, which will linger the storm around for quite a bit. So we're going to pay close attention to how the jet stream maneuvers itself over the next several days. What I will point out is that the European model has been slightly leaning towards GFS model as of recently. The European model isn't as confident as bringing as powerful of a storm as it initially anticipated, because in the previous runs, the European model was forecasting this storm to drop down to a pressure of 969 millibars. It has refrained from that forecast as of recent runs, where we see the millibar pressure still drop down to a very low pressure at 979 millibars, but isn't necessarily as powerful and doesn't develop as quickly, which is leaning more to the GFS model scenario. So this could be another one of those scenarios where the European model might eventually cave into what the GFS model scenario is stating, and the GFS model would end up being a more correct model. And we've seen that shift with a small shift towards that direction from the European model, where the snow is a little bit more focused in on New England rather than the areas further southward. But we still could easily see this forecast change, because we're still 4 days out, and that's still plenty of time for there to be variations in the forecast. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. But it is becoming increasingly likely, it's pretty much inevitable at this point, much of the northern Midwest should expect 3 to 6 inches of snow, and 1 to 3 inches of snow just south of it, and then over 6 inches of snow in the extreme northern portions of the Midwest like North Dakota, northern Minnesota, and Wisconsin. That's what you should expect. And in the Northeast, for New England, it's becoming increasingly likely that, especially in the interior portions of New England, it's becoming likely at this point you will experience a major snowstorm. It becomes more uncertain closer to the coast like Boston, New York City, if you're going to experience a heavy snowfall there, because there's still questions regarding the exact trajectory of this storm. But I'll keep you guys updated as the forecast models change their forecast over the next several days. Let me show you guys now the GFS model's forecast. The GFS model for the first few days is showing a forecast scenario that's very similar to the European model, where it does still bring this clipper system through the northern Midwest, bringing a decent amount of snow through those areas. However, again, a key difference with the GFS model is that it expects the storm system to develop a lot later, or at least the storm system to rapidly intensify a lot later than what the European model is suggesting, because the GFS model doesn't expect as significant of a jet stream dip for that Arctic air to interact with the very warm Gulf of Mexico air mass that would create enough of a convective and unstable environment for this storm to rapidly intensify very early. So as a result, the GFS model intensifies the storm quite a bit later and brings more of the snow to the interior Northeast, while the areas further southward and westward like New York City, northern New Jersey, and Pennsylvania don't receive much of any snowfall accumulation, or very little snowfall accumulation in this scenario. So still definitely this definitely does raise the uncertainty with this forecast, but I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days, where I wouldn't say we'll get a really confident forecast until I'd say 24 hours from now, when that low pressure system really makes that turn, because that will determine how strong the ridging will be just to the west of this low pressure system, to determine how strong northerly winds will be and how much that Arctic air will interact with the very warm air mass located in the Gulf Coast states. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days, so pay close attention over the next 24 hours to see when exactly that low pressure system will take that turn to the southeast, because that will be a key thing we're going to be watching to determine who will get the heaviest snowfall in the Northeast. So this is a European model snowfall forecast when it comes to this next winter storm. We do see a pretty large area of 6 to 12 inches in the northern Midwest, and we see 3 to 6 inches in Minneapolis. Chicago is experiencing right around 1 to 3 inches, a little bit more in Milwaukee, where you're closer to the 3 to 6 inch category, so as Detroit. And then we do see this storm really is a powerhouse once it approaches the Northeast, where the European model is still forecasting that certain areas of upstate New York, the extreme northeastern portion of Pennsylvania, and the extreme northern portions of New Jersey experiences well over 2 feet of snow, which would be close to record-breaking territory in some of those areas. And we see a pretty large area of over a foot of snow as well in the throughout upstate New York and even into New England. And as for the bigger cities, New York City would experience around 3 to 6 inches of snow in this scenario. I think the European mall might be over-exaggerating it a little bit. I could easily see New York City maybe getting 3 inches of snow, but I'm not sure about about 6 to 12 inches, especially with the GFS model not really agreeing towards that scenario. And Boston could maybe experience 3 to 6 inches of snow from this storm as well, based on the European mall's forecast. We're going to see if this forecast maintains and see which computer model will end up being the more correct one, because that'll play a big role in terms of how much snowfall you'll experience in the more populated areas of the Northeast. The GFS model is bringing snowfall to a lot of the same areas, but it does bring it, there are definitely differences with this snowfall forecast. For example, I do believe that the GFS model is over-exaggerating the snowfall a little bit towards Iowa and Illinois and Missouri. It doesn't seem like that there's going to be enough really convective energy for that much snowfall to fall in those areas. Expect more like 3 inches of snow right around this area. And then for the Northeast, we do see that, of course, the heaviest snowfall is focused more in on New England rather than the areas further southward and westward. And keep in mind, this also includes this first snowstorm, and it seems like the GFS model is also exaggerating a little bit how much snowfall there will be from this first snowstorm in a lot of these areas, so it isn't representative of how much snowfall you'll receive from the second snowstorm. But we do see a large area of over 12 inches of snow over the next 5 days in the GFS model scenario, so this is something to pay close attention to in New England, as it's likely at this point you're going to experience a major snowstorm. It's more uncertain when we take a look at the coastal cities, so I'll keep you guys updated. So this is my current snowfall forecast for the Midwest and Northeast. So in Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland, you should expect right around 1 to 3 inches of snow over the next 3 days, as it seems like the storm won't be necessarily strong enough to bring a very, very significant snowstorm, but you still need to watch out for that possibility of heavy snowfall for your Sunday commute. And going into the northern Midwest, you could expect a little bit more snow, where this storm will be a little bit more formidable, 6 to 12 inches of snow throughout northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then you could see up to over a foot of snow in a large portion of upstate New York, especially in the higher elevations. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility that localized areas experience over 2 feet of snow, and it's going to be a very close forecast in New York City and Boston. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. But at this point, it seems like those areas should maybe receive 1 inch of snow from the storm system, but don't rule out the possibility of variations in the forecast. But I thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather related content.